All right, we have a smaller group of letters here for this next lesson, and it is the R and the S. And these are fairly unique letters in the lowercase alphabet of this type of cursive. They don't necessarily look like each other, but they do have some common characteristics, most notably the fact that they come up above the X height just a little bit. They're the only letters that come up above the X height just a little bit like that. You know, every other letter that goes above the X height will either go up to this TD line or all the way up to the ascender line. But these just come up a little bit above the X height. And I'll show you why they do that in a second when I draw the letters, when I write the letters. But yeah, both of them start with this underturn, kind of this elongated underturn that goes up above the X height. And they both have their own interesting moves after that. So if I do one real big here, if I'm pretending this is my X height here, I'm going to do an underturn, come up above the X height, come down like that on this angle in this direction, which you rarely do in this script. And then I'm going to do a nice soft shoulder turn off of that, and then start coming down on my main slant, down to the baseline, and do a nice tight turn on that connective slant again. All right. So we start on our connective slant here. We end on our connective slant, and this stroke is coming down on the main slant. All right. And the trick with this letter is just to make sure you're coming up above that X height, and then to nail this little move here. Go nice and slow if you need to. Get that little shoulder move down. Study it, see what it looks like, try it yourself, and then compare it to the exemplar. Trace the exemplar if you need to, so really feel what that feels like in your hand when you're writing it. Okay? All right, we'll talk about the size of the letter and why it comes up above the X height when I do some words with it. That's the best place to showcase why we're going up above the X height. All right, with the S, I'll do another big version of this one. I'll come up over my X height. If this is my X height on this big version, come down, do a nice rounded move, come all the way back to that connective entry stroke. Now I'll just pick my pen up, put it down here. You could retrace if you wanted to like this, and then just exit on that connective slant again. So we have our connective slants. Then you kind of want the body of this letter to be on your main slant, not necessarily this line, the belly of it, I guess you could say. That doesn't need to be on the main slant, but the whole body you kind of want going in that direction. All right, so let's make one at regular size. There you go. That entry might have got a little flat there. That's better. All right, let's combine the R and the S with some other letters. And the first word we have is. Very common word to be writing. Do our I entry, underturn entry, downstroke into another underturn, into our S. Do that little S move, and then exit. That S move does have a little bit of a compoundness to it, okay? Note when I go up, let's just say I'm going up to the TD line, this is my X. I go up above that X, and then I'm going like this, okay? Notice how it's like that, and then like that, all right? Pay attention to these little tiny details. All right, was another very common word to be writing. Do my W. Into my A, a little compound connection, and then into my S. All right. Check my slant. Looking pretty good. Spacing's looking pretty good too. All right, now let's say we didn't bring that S over the X-height, up above the X-height. Let's see what this looks like when we bring the S just up to the X-height like we do our other letters. Make my W, go into my A, then I'm going to make my wrong S here. All right. You should see here that this S, it's just too small if you don't bring it up. You got to bring it above. That allows you the space to really make the proper size S that's going to fit in with the rest of the script, okay? It's just the way the S and the R, same thing happens there. If you make that R too small, it's not, if you don't go above the X height, it's not going to look right. It's going to look too small compared to the other letters in the script. I mean, this A just looks a lot bigger than that S. It looks like the S was made too small. So that's why we come up above the X height to make it, to give it the visual appearance of having consistent size. So size isn't always about hitting these lines. It's also about the visual appearance or perception of size. And for S and R, for those forms, because they have a different type of form, you have to come up above the X height to give them that sense of consistency of size. All right, let's do a longer word here, snare. I'm gonna bring it up above the X height as we just talked about. Compound into my N. Another compound into the A. My R, and then loop out into an E. All right, and if you're looking, if you see any issues with this, I see one jumping out to me, and this A didn't really kind of miss the baseline there with that A. Just a small miss, but it's those little things that make the script look, I don't want to say sloppy, but for lack of a better word, I'll say sloppy. All right, let's go on to the next word, noses, which features something that a lot of people usually wonder about, and that's how do you do this connection between the O and the S? And this is how I like to do it. I like to maybe just start a little bit further down the O than I normally would, and I do my S, and I just bring it to there. And then I go, I'll finish the word, do my second S as I normally would. I think that's the best way to do it, really. Maybe you push this connective stroke a little bit further down than you normally would. Like if we were connecting O to N, I wouldn't have it loop down like I did with the S. I'd have it stay nice and high, close to the X height. But with the S, because I want to pull this entry stroke down so it gets closer to this second stroke in the S, so that it gets close to closing that loop. Because the other way you could do it, which I don't recommend, it doesn't look as good, I think. So you had O. I mean, you could have a big gap there, and then it starts to not look super great to me. This doesn't look bad either, but I like to close this gap as much as possible. And you do that by just pulling this down a little bit further, bringing it closer to the baseline. Okay? So definitely practice that OS connection. Try different ways with it. See what you like the best. See which works best for you. And you got a lot of letters to practice with now, so don't be afraid to come up with your own words. Practice maybe some double S's. That's something you see a lot in writing. Double R's. Those will definitely illuminate any inconsistencies you have in these two letters if you do those letters back to back within a word.